Okay, so if everything's kind of coming together, today we're going to be talking to I Like Knives, aka Pete. Pete's probably one of the top scamp throwers out there. I'd say you're probably the most active. Um, well, I throw scamp, and I think you're one of the best. So there
That's
you go.
very humbling. Thank you so much, Ace. Appreciate that.
And definitely kind of improve your ability on Misha's formula probably faster than anyone. Had you thrown knives or anything before, Pete?
Never. I couldn't even throw a baseball before. That was my fear. I couldn't throw anything.
Okay, so uh, let's get started. What's your background? What got us to you starting to throw knives? What's the origin story?
The origin story is I was just scrolling through Instagram one day, and I think one of Misha's videos came across my feed somehow, and I was like stunned to see a knife be able to fly straight, first of all, with so much power and accuracy. And I honestly thought it was bullshit, like the majority of crap you see on Instagram, right? So I dug a little deeper, like I always do with stuff that interests me, and started researching a little bit more, and found Thomas Holtman there at Skanf Deutschland, and connected with him, and he connected me with Misha, and kind of just went from there, you know.
Um, I would definitely say that if I were to go back a couple of years, I would 100% agree. It's just someone's doing CGI weirdness. It's a camera angle. It's this. It's that.
Totally.
So why do you even want to start in the first place? Was it just like cool, LC factor made you feel like a cool dude?
No, I've always been pretty fucking cool, so I didn't need more of that.
Oh dear,
Oh dear.
humble too.
Humble. No, it's not that. For me, it was, I just like skills, man. I just like to find different skills to try. And it seemed like a skill that would go with other skills that I've already collected. And I just wanted to put into the bag of tricks, you know?
I can definitely appreciate that. So what's the formula? How long did it take you to actually be able to throw that knife so it flies like a dart?
Um, I think,
And we can talk about that in weeks. We can talk about that in hours.
yeah.
Maybe both.
So, you know, there's a lot of people say that I've been doing such and such for this amount of years, right? And then, or this amount of time, but how much actual time did somebody put into the craft, right? I think that comes into a big factor. One of the things that Misha, what I liked about Misha was number one, like all the good instructors that I've had in my life. His first and foremost thing was like, let's talk, let's see if we're going to get along and if we're the right fit. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was really a really neat aspect from learning from him. We did get along, we connected. And then he told me it's like anything else, man. I just listened to my instructor, you know. He said to train for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and take 2 days off. So I trained for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, took 2 days off. I just followed instruction. I didn't fuck around. I did exactly what he said. Some of the stuff that he made me do it was just strange, but much like learning kung fu and stuff like that, there are things that you're learning or practicing that you're not learning what you think you're learning, right? And he had a lot of that. So it was like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off kind of stuff, and then you know how to do that empty little block or whatever that shit was in that movie, right? That kind of stuff. So that actually really impressed me, because it wasn't just like, okay, you're going to hold a knife like this and you're going to throw it like this and it's going to work, right? He took me through a bunch of different processes and mechanics, and then started just applying them together, you know, like he's like, combine this with this, combine this with this. And then all of a sudden it all started to come together and make sense. So for me, I I apparently progressed a lot quicker than most people do, but I think that's just in essence due to the fact of what time you put into it, right? And I took it serious. I didn't fuck around. I didn't just think it was just like a side hobby. I took it very seriously, like every skill set that I try to learn. And I progressed into no spin, which was what I wanted to learn. He didn't show me no spin for 6 months, you know, and so I was like, man, when am I going to see this no spin? When am I going to do the no spin? But there was a reason for that, and he had a valid reason for that. And as soon as I was able to do all the other stuff, the no spin just came, not easily, but naturally would be the word I would use. And then I just started applying the mechanics. And what I actually did was, when the no spin was introduced into my training, I went back to the very first lesson, and reviewed what it was he was trying to show me in that lesson, and then just started applying the basics to the complex movements, right? And that seemed to really help my progress a lot. And just be humble and just do what your teacher says, right? So for me, I think it took 7 months for me to be able to start throwing straight paths, not a arc kind of movement, which is one of the things I really liked about Skanf is the directness to the target, which in essence allows you to aim at any angle into whatever. You throw at the feet, or you could throw at the head or the mid body. It's a direct line to the target, not an arced kind of throw that I see in other styles, which I'm not negating their style. It's just Skanf for me was combat knife throwing, right? So that's what I wanted to learn.
It's definitely interesting because you talk about how you're learning these things and you're like, well, why am I doing this? Right? Like, I don't want to learn this. Right? Just like, okay, you're going to sweep the floor in the kung fu hall, but you're going to sweep the floor like this. Well, there's way better ways to sweep the floor. Why would I sweep the floor like that?
Right.
Just shut up and sweep the floor like I told you.
Get a
right?
vacuum, right?
And it's like 2 months later, 3 months later, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I really
okay.
say that listening to your teacher, step one is always find the correct teacher, right? Do some knowledge, do some research. There's a lot of bullshit out there. A lot of people that say they know how to do something, they don't. For me, I've always researched the teachers that are going to impact my life, because I want to do exactly what they say and honor their style, their throwing style in this case. And I know that Coach Misha is very proud of me. I got some pretty awesome personal messages from him that I've actually saved and taken pictures of, because I was just like, holy shit, this is awesome. This is the goal, to make my teacher proud, right? So, yeah.
And in Russian culture, I mean, those compliments don't come easy.
Yeah.
At all.
Correct.
All right, like
100%.
Very, very rare. A lot of times it's just, I thought about taking a bunch of the videos, stringing them together, and making a montage of him telling me how terrible I was.
I think that would be one of the best. I could share you some of mine, because man, did he make fun of me. I'm like, holy shit. You do this. You're
like,
oh, so it was awesome. I totally agree with you.
There's also a certain amount of going through and trying to communicate through a massive, massive language barrier.
Right.
Where you very much understand how your dog feels in terms of no, yes, and you're picking up, like, there's just this, you have to use a different part of your brain to learn.
Correct.
And because you're not there, and everything's by video, and it's just, it requires a lot of patience on I think the coach's side as well as the participant, especially something that's, Skanf is very, very misunderstood.
I would think so. Yeah, I think a lot of people that have an opinion, whether it's Skanf or any subject, but they never done it, or have never tried to do it, or have never learned from someone that knows how to do it, to have an opinion on such matters is in my opinion, not the smartest, right?
Well, up until up until really Misha popped up and started teaching people. So I mean, before Holtman, before Yanni the Greek, um, there wasn't anyone that was a direct student. So everyone was looking at a video of Fedden with poor lighting that was shot on a potato in like the early 2000s. And depending on the angles, like especially with the Skanf throws and speed, depending on what's going on, you can't tell whether it's a half spin or an O spin
Yeah,
because
I agree with that too. And the power, right? It's really difficult. It was difficult for me to tell at first. I actually, when I saw the videos of Fedden and Misha throwing together, I actually recorded them and then put them into my software and slowed them down in slow motion just so I could pick up the little nuances and stuff like that. And even at that, it was really difficult to tell whether they were throwing half spin or no spin because they were just ripping them into the target.
well, especially with that when the knife's coming in sidearm, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Very,
if it's going like this or it's going very quickly like that, I mean it's fractions of seconds, right? So it can be very, very difficult to tell, and especially the poor video quality and things like
yeah.
that. Also going through and looking at things in terms of there was a lot of attempts in those old videos when they were translated from when they were in the Russian language. Getting a chance to go through and watch those videos, having done training, or we'd both seen that manual. And there's a lot of talk about compounding angular velocity into linear velocity and impulse and bouncing off the goggial tendon reflex. It's like, yeah, like I guess that's all true, but it's that complicated, but it's not that complicated.
That's correct.
And then listening to people and kind of watch those old translations, trying to use those same explanations where, like, I have a background in applied mechanics and physics. I understand what those words mean, but it's not necessary to explain it that way.
I have to 100% agree with you. Yeah, I think it's a lot more simpler than, I think most things are a lot more simpler than people make them out to be, and maybe sometimes it's made out to be more complex so that it's some big hoorah thing that it's not possible for most people to achieve this. And I think that's actually false. I think anybody can learn Skanf. I think anybody can learn sewing, right? It's up to the individual if you want to try, and if you get the proper instruction. Again, I think that's really key. I've seen a lot of guys on this Instagram and shit like that where they claim to throw Skanf, right? And I'm like, well, where did you learn Skanf from? Well, I didn't. I watched the video or shit like that. And then I'm like, well, you're not throwing Skanf, and I can see it, but that's not for me to say, right? But I think that gets misunderstood a lot. But it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot simpler than people think, or it's been made out to be, right?
So I know what my answer to the question is, but I'm interested in what yours is. Is Skanf a technique, or is it a collection of principles?
I think it's a collection of principles.
Expand on that, please.
So for me, it's a feeling, okay? So I guess ultimately it is also a technique. For me, it's replicating the same feeling over and over again. But that feeling happens with a bunch of principles applied together to create that technique. So for me, Skanf came a little bit natural for me, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way, because I find that Skanf is an internal art. So there's stuff that happens on the inside that makes the knife do stuff on the outside, as an expression into the knife. So I guess it's really both.
If we could break down what you mean by internal art for people that don't have a Chinese martial arts background.
Yeah, and that's what it is for me. For me, I have a vast Chinese martial arts background, and how can I explain an internal? When I throw the knife, I feel the technique inside my dantian, inside my core, if you will. That's the English version. Inside my core, it's a core throw. It's an entire body throw. It's actually not a throw like a baseball. It is internal movements with external things happening because of those internal movements. Now, I'm not saying I'm moving my organs around or some fancy bullshit like that. It's just.
But when you
But
do,
when you
when
do,
you do move that organ around, you know?
but you know, it's for me. Skanf starts from the base, right? It's like anything starts from the ground up. It shouldn't start halfway up or in your arm or whatever. The throw starts from the ground. It's transferred through the legs, through all the joints, into your, into your center, into your core. You have to feel the connection to the earth. You have to feel the connection to yourself. And then in Skanf, it's not a throw. I feel it's, if I throw something, I have to open my hand, right? I have to take this cup in order to throw it at that phone. I'm gonna have to let go of the cup, right? You have to open your hand. So you don't do that in Skanf, right? So the other thing I noticed for me, and I know this has been a big debate on the knife throwing forums and shit like that, it's a pull.
God damn, you did it.
I did it. I did it.
You went
Once
there.
I started pulling the knife across the lateral plane, I don't know if that makes sense in what I'm saying, pulling instead of pushing, the effect on the knife and the power that resulted because of that was exponential for me. And there was a huge learning curve that happened once I started doing that and applying that properly.
Well, I mean, you could argue that every single thing that the body does is a pulling movement because the muscles all work in the cable system.
Like for me, like it's I think I have a video of Fedin saying it on my Instagram, and he says it in Russian. So for those people that don't speak Russian, they may not understand what he's saying. But he says it's not in the arm at all, right? It's in the body. So that was a big one for me. Like, I understand a little bit of Russian, right?
I think that the whole push-pull debate is an interesting one because there are styles where 100% you're pushing.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I wanted to say that too. I'm just saying in Skanf, to me personally, it feels
so like Danger's anti-spin method or Western spin, it is very much
a push.
You are pushing to cancel that out.
Correct. I'm gonna grab.
I need to go.
Grab a knife too. Just give me 1 sec.
Okay, I'm just gonna grab my dog real quick.
Two things. First off,
yes.
Thank you for sending me your personal one so I can complete my collection of 6. I'll never forget that kindness you showed me. Really, sincerely, thank you. So now I have 6.
That was all shone up. And did you get it chrome plated?
I just polished the shit out of them.
So just quickly scrolling back, someone was asking about the Diabolical Dr. 7. Will there be a restock anytime on the student knife? I'm assuming you're asking about the IVA student knife. The IVA student knives are in stock. If you can't see them, press Control F5 on your browser, and if that doesn't work, send me a DM after this. Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. I forgot where we were.
So with Danger's method that he uses, the anti-spin method, or the kind of the Western style, it definitely is a push.
Yeah.
And 100% you can push. With the wave styles, and I would say it's not, I wouldn't even describe it as a pull. I would say that it's a cast.
Yeah.
Right? It's like using a fly fishing rod. It's like using a bullwhip, in which I'm fairly reasonable with. It's a cast. It's like skipping a stone, and the movement when you're casting something is you lead, and go through. When you're skipping a stone, your elbow leads and comes through. And having played with, whether you stop your hand or not, I find the only time that makes a difference is whether I'm doing half spin or not.
Right.
Um, I tend to follow through more when I do it. And again, I agree with you. I believe Skanf was a collection of principles and concepts. And I describe it to people. I was talking to Johannes, the Finnish gangster, I like to refer to him as, the other day. And he was asking me about Skanf as a technique. And a lot of times when people talk about Skanf as a technique, it's that sidearm throw. The only sidearm throw that I was taught was half spin. I was never taught to throw sidearm no spin. But it's a collection of principles, and if we're going through and we're looking at things in terms of, well, firstly, is knife throwing martial art, yes or no, for you?
Can it be used as a martial art, you mean? Yes, for
If
sure.
trained properly, right?
Yeah, of course. It's like, I mean, we had this discussion, you and I. I mean, I can take a fucking sandwich and make it a combat sandwich, right? Throw it in your face, kick you in the nuts. It's a combat sandwich.
Put a ghost pepper sauce on there. It's over, bud.
Right?
Over.
So, I mean, I think I have a video of me. I took a freaking seashell and tossed it into 7 meters into wood, right?
Sure.
And that's the result of the principles, right? So with throwing, I mean, I think one of the things learning from Misha was, I think he teaches everyone according to their skill level, perhaps, right? Or to what he sees they're at. For me, he had me throw every possible grip from 1 meter all the way to 20. He wouldn't let me go to the next thing until I hit a 20-meter fucking no spin. I'm like, dude, this is impossible. And I remember, like, I thought it was going to be impossible. And he made me, this grip, this grip, this grip, like, you name it. Hold the knife back, go backhand, go sidearm, go off. Like, holy shit, when am I going to learn this? I thought it was a one grip. But I think what that ended up teaching me was, A, distance is irrelevant if technique is correct, right? And B, it doesn't matter how you hold the knife as long as you apply the principles, right? Because for me, again, just for me, half spin, no spin, the internal stuff that happens is the same, right? So whether you hold it sidearm, whether you go this way, he made me throw every single angle that my arm would travel, no spin. Every single arm that my arm would travel, half spin. Behind the back, fuck, it was incredible, all the different methods that he made me do that, A, I never thought would be possible. And B, I'm like, well, I would never grab a knife like that, right? For me, combat knife throwing is actually one of my favorite things to throw are kitchen knives. Kitchen knives are sharp. You grab a fucking kitchen knife like that, it's gonna suck a lot, right? So you have to adjust, right? You go like that. There's the sharp end of the blade. You just don't take that finger and put it there. You still do the pushing and the finger and all that stuff, but you don't do this, that's for sure, right? So the principles, right? Not the technique. Because if I said it was the technique and I say it's okay, it's a half spin, that's going to be it every time, right? Because technique. Well, no, if you do that, you're going to cut your fucking finger off. So.
With a live edge, yeah.
Right? Or yeah. I'm talking with a sharp edge, right? Exactly. Yeah. So.
I think that I would disagree that grip is relevant.
Oh no, the grip is definitely relevant.
Oh,
sorry, I didn't mean to sound like that.
Okay, I was like, it's the entire point of interface.
It has to be the
I
same.
I think it has to be relevant.
So it's big time relevant. That is, sorry, I didn't mean to sound like it wasn't. But if you're going to throw a live edge knife, right, versus a throwing knife, you have to alternate the grip slightly. But for me, this doesn't change. It's this that changes. right? I'm just not wrapping that last finger around that sharp with a sharp edge. That's the only difference, right? In a half spin,
Mhm.
in a no spin, it's the same. It's the same. Exactly the same over and over again. It has to be the same. You have to start from you know, my kung fu instructor back in the day used to say, it's like you have to have like a litmus test, right? It
Sure.
has to be a standard, right? And then from that standard, you make slight adjustments, but the standard is still in that original thing, right?
I tend to prefer knives that I can throw from a closed grip.
Yeah,
Um,
because they get sucked out of
and
your hand that way.
what's that?
Because then it gets sucked out of your hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, like as an example, with the better Bowie,
What a beautiful knife that is.
it's great. But what I like about it is I go from here to here,
Yep.
and it's one movement.
Correct.
Um, with the bullet train, we were talking about this earlier. Me going through from my hammer grip to my throwing grip,
Yep.
and both of them, the handles are such at which I can throw from a closed grip. The knives that I struggle with are the ones that have some type of feature on the handle. And you can tell knives that I've designed because they have, like the Tengu Kadaki, it has a straight spine and a slight taper to the handle because I want to be able to throw it from that closed grip. And because when we go through and we talk about, you know, that hypothetical situation that knife throwing is a martial art, for me, the reason why I look at things in terms of principles is because I fight with guys all the time. I tangle, especially with grappling.
Yeah.
I'm grappling with people all the time. Here's the concepts that need to happen. I need to have this happen to this person's body, and there's a bunch of ways that I can go through and I can create that. Right? There's a bunch of ways to go through and lock that shoulder in this way. And there's a bunch of ways I can grab to make that happen, but all that matters is that that's occurring.
Correct.
And because I know that fighting is messy, it's why I tend to look at things in terms of concepts and principles and a feeling.
Yeah.
The being able to throw something from a closed grip. I mean, my goal when I started was to be able to pick up anything and stick it 95% of the time at 3 meters. That's what I need to be able to do.
That was, you know, we have similar goals, right? Because if you look at all the other ancient styles of, like, say, throwing the shurikens, right?
Yeah.
Those were basically meant to defend against a long range weapon, right? So a staff, how long does the staff reach, right? How long does a 3-part staff reach, or the nunchucks or whatever? They were using it against that. That's the distance, right? So I'm saying 4 meters was mine. Yours was 3. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like the.
Yeah, because Wing Chun, you guys have that dragon staff or whatever it is. It's a longer staff, yeah?
Yeah.
It's like 10 feet.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So my goal was to be able to do that, to be able to put something point first, to be able to pick up almost anything, send a point first at 3 meters.
Yep.
And for me to be able to do that, like I said, 95% of the time, and I can do that, but when I want to go through and get further out, I become more fussy with my handles.
What do you mean?
I need to have a handle that flows better, right? So the original Danger Dashie,
Yeah.
I don't like that bulb because it would catch, right? Where when I worked with Danger on that fast Dashie, this doesn't catch.
Okay.
I can throw from a closed grip.
Is it a little bit narrower? Is that why?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's
cool. We took a little bit of the. That's how. Okay. I was curious
So
about
it just flows a little better. And so for me, I find that that works really well. And so when I say a closed grip, I don't mean like shaking your granddad's hand. I mean like about the same amount of pressure that I had a martial arts instructor way back when. He said, you should hold your hand like you're holding a sparrow's egg,
Mine told me a
right?
butterfly. Yeah.
Hmm?
Mine
Yeah.
said a
Like,
butterfly.
so just to have that, it's enough so that it can stay loose, but when it hits, get that
Yeah.
alignment. Um, and so that's the grip that I'm going for. And when we start going through and seeing the rise of fast draw, which is the future, right? It's the future of knife throwing because it makes it interesting.
For sure.
To go through and be able to throw from a grip that you would draw from the sheath directly, or to be able to index from the sheath with that same grip. If we want to go through in terms of think about it in terms of like what sucks about Skanf, right? And I would say the limitation, especially for someone starting out, is having to go through and try to create that very specific grip.
Yeah.
And to go through and be able to create that under pressure while getting it out of the
Yeah.
sheath. And I would say that would be the limitation of it, where you can employ a lot of those principles. Um, you can employ a lot of the principles of starting to throw out the feet, right? Going through and like twisting to load up your sling system, elbow leads, right? One guy, Angel, talks about as long as the wrist is traveling in a straight line towards the target,
That's a good
right?
point. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, the reason I look at it in terms of principles over technique is I need to be able to make that work in really non-ideal situations.
That's right.
And depending on what's happening, I mean, with lighter objects, especially when you start getting a shuriken, you can overgas them when you start trying to go through and put too much from that internal energy.
Right.
Start to see them kick out and fishtail.
Yeah.
And so if you're in close and it's just shuriken work, sometimes it's just that flick of the wrist
Right.
to make that happen. But it's that you're isolating that component. What are your thoughts on that?
I 100% agree with you, especially those smaller shurikens, like that little peckerhead thing that you showed me. What was that thing called?
The dragonfly?
Baby dragonfly. Yeah. I had a real tough time with that. Because it's front heavy, right? And it's so very small. But what I found was
If I can stick it in the plywood at 10 meters, you surely can do the same.
I can. It took me a while though, Ace. Yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge for me to figure it out. And but once I figured it out, that thing is awesome, dude. It's so cool. It just wants to go straight. But for me, if you were going to talk about knife throwing or shuriken throwing as a viable martial art, let's say, or for self-defense, let's say, or for hunting, right? You want to be able to draw that tool. It could be a spoon, right? You want to be able to draw whatever tool it is and throw it immediately, exactly like you said, without going, oh shit, now I gotta do this, and then you're getting the shit kicked out of you, right? So those little shurikens, I started applying the principles in a closed grip with absolutely no finger. I can't remember the gentleman's name.
Are you using what type of grip are you using?
I'll grab it.
Is there any questions that you guys want answered?
So
Try to make sure we get them all for you.
Here. Okay. How do not sound like an asshole, right? Like, I like to conceal the shit that I carry for a number of reasons, right? I'm not a guy that has a knife that you see on me at all, but I have more than one knife on me at all times. So one of the places I like to carry is I have a special thing that I have that allows me to keep it in here. Okay. So when you're deploying your knife, it's already in your hand. You say you're in your pockets and there's the assholes coming. It's already in my hand, right? Without you knowing, right? It's in this hand. So to be able to throw it from this grip without having to go to this or this or whatever grip, you need to apply principles, right? So still trying to think. Beckham, is that his last name? I don't know if I'm Nolan, right? He is fucking.
That guy's killing it.
Dude, that is one of the fucking hardest. Like, he just makes it look so freaking easy that I don't think he even knows, right? And he's pretty humble about it, which is really cool. So, but it's a wrist movement, right? It's the relaxed wrist coming back, and then the knife going, the tool going, right? So I like to have a close grip on stuff. If you can throw something like this and nail it, like you said, into plywood from whatever grip, because, you know, say it's in your pocket, right? You want to be able to grab it out and go, not think about it. So that you don't have to go to the Skanf grip, right? The shuriken throwing was challenging for me at first, and man, did I fall in love with it because of you. You made me stick, because you sent them to me, so thank you. But just one thing I realized with this guy in particular, and when I watched Fedin throw and his grip, it wasn't always in here, right? It wasn't always in the knife wasn't always placed into here. He actually like that, right? Right? So really loose, passive finger, stuff like that. So when I seen that, I'm like, well, wait a sec. I have the knife here because that's how Misha showed me. That's how he said to do it. Right? When I see that's a possibility, I'm like, well, wait a sec. So it's the same principles applied slightly differently that create the result, right? So throwing shurikens is an art of its own, I find, because like you said, you can overthrow them, right? But once you figure them out, man, are they fun. They're just fun.
Especially when you get into something like the Ega Dart, and some of them, yeah, like the dragonfly. The dragonfly it'll fishtail, it'll gas it out,
yeah.
You'll overgas it.
Yeah.
And there is a very well-known thrower who I really, really look up to.
Yeah.
I sent him the dragonflies, and he said, I can't throw these, much past 3 meters. And for me, I find that interesting, and you as a Chinese martial artist, you'll find that interesting, where there was this concept at which the weapons weren't necessarily intuitive. It took a certain skill set to be able to throw certain things. Yeah. And so the dragonfly fits into that. You have to understand how to grip it. And there's a bunch of ways that you can kind of play with it. The dragonfly, some people find it throws better for them upside down. Right? So to throw it instead of this way, to throw it this way.
Right.
So if you're like Lobo and you tend to have them coming in like this, you want to throw it upside down.
Interesting.
Right? And so there's that. But intuitively, people see something that's smaller and they assume they need to kind of hold it deeper.
Right.
And with the dragonfly, the way that's set up where you have to throw it the other way. And as soon as somebody's able to make that adjustment, like I'll send you a video where I stick it in a plywood at 10 meters, and it flies and kind of like rotates and does its thing to about 5.5 meters, 6 meters before it gets to here, and it goes and just continues going straight.
Because of the weight front end, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean they have a really like Oriental, really like Chinese flavor to them.
Yeah. And
the biggest compliment I've had on them was there was a guy from Hong Kong that ordered like 4 of them.
Yeah.
As soon as his order showed up, ordered another 4 right away.
Cool.
But just like, so it's got a certain flavor, but if you don't know how to throw those, they're going to be
I
tough.
really like the tungsten one that you sent me. That thing's awesome.
I'm torn as to whether to keep doing the tungsten. The cubic spikes we can't keep doing because I more or less send the tungsten stuff out because I want it out there, but it's more or less goes out at my cost.
Right.
And so when I have to replace them, it just kind of frustrates me.
Yeah.
But the cubic ones break really easily. The round ones hold up a little bit better, but the tungsten, there's no way for us to heat treat it.
Right.
So it's like we get these tungsten rods, we have to source them. It's a real pain in the ass to go through and actually like do the tips on them. And anyone that has one that broke, try touching it up with a file or something like that, or a grinder. If you don't have good stuff, like it's right.
I could imagine.
So it's really hard to work with. What's that?
They can break.
They'll snap right in half. The tips will break. Yeah, they'll snap right in half because it's so brittle, right? Like it's so hard and so heavy. The square ones break a lot faster, so we won't do those. But when you go through and you look at it in terms of what that'll do,
yeah.
Like I mean, at 7 meters, I can put it through 3/8 plywood
Easily.
And I don't throw particularly hard.
Yeah.
Right? Like you buried one like 2 inches into a stump from 5, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
bitch to get out.
get a drill and start drilling holes beside it, right?
Telling you, like, you need to make an extraction device for this thing of some sort, you know, like
it's a drill. You got to drill holes beside it.
That's cool.
So in some ways, I'm torn as to whether to keep doing them because, like, well, I don't want to have a product breaking and I don't want to have to keep replacing them.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, to me, there's a cool factor to them.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, with on the topic of shuriken, going through and looking at, what is a fighting grip, right? And how that, right? And all the techniques that happened with that, right? So it wasn't necessarily that they would be deployed and that you'd immediately have to throw it. It might be one of those things where they're hidden in different ways, right? And so it would, you're in there, you have these different grips and that transition, right? So in Bujinkan, this is called a shito or a boshiken. We basically just jab someone with your thumb.
Right.
And then when this is here or it's hidden, right? Yeah. And so you have that, and that's where it comes through. Well, as that's there, this is backed up in the heel of your hand, right? So there's a certain amount of like sleights of hand that would happen in which you're transitioning with these tools. So going through and with the smaller ones, there's that manipulation. But again, I mean, how far are you throwing them from?
Yeah, exactly, right. And again, for the research that I've done, because I'm no expert at anything, but for the research that I've done, they were meant for close range, up 5 meters, right, max.
Yeah.
For the research I've done, their intention, right? So, can you throw them 10 meters? Yeah, absolutely. I ripped that tungsten thing at 15 meters, and it stuck. But it was rotating, right? I don't know. I couldn't count how many rotations, right?
Well, there's a pitch and pray method to it for sure, right?
Totally. So for me, the tungsten one, what I really like about it is it fits beautifully into a waist belt through the little loophole, and it just looks like it's your belt end, right? Little clasp. So it's very easily concealed and hidden, and it's very easy to come out really quick, being round and smooth. It's one of my favorite EDCs for sure.
Going through and carrying them, you carry them in a small piece of hose, or you can make a throwaway sheath. You take those white Bic pens, right? So you go through and you heat it up with a lighter and you fold it over on itself, and then you slide that in. And then so you just pull it out because there's no orientation to it. You just need the point facing forward. Nailless Champion, is it possible to make a tungsten machete? Short answer is yes. Longer answer is you probably don't have the money. Tungsten is incredibly expensive. We sell those spikes at like 30 something Canadian, and that's about what they cost. So tungsten is a very, very expensive metal because it has such a high melting point. And when they put it together for those rods, I believe they sinter it. So going through in the logistics of getting a tungsten machete made, good luck. It would break very quickly.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you're probably not strong enough to be able to swing it.
Yeah.
Neither am I. They would be very, very heavy. Tungsten is 1.7 times the weight of lead, or the density of lead, and it's 2.5 times the density of steel. So short answer, you don't want to spend that kind of money for it, and it wouldn't be worth it. You would be sad, and it would break right away.
Yeah, like you said, they're brittle. Yeah.
But going through and looking at the manipulation stuff, I mean, does a Chinese martial art that you deal with, does it deal with, in Chinese the word I think is fei biao? Do you guys deal with it in your art or no?
No.
Okay.
The only stuff that I got taught from my instructor was the double butterfly swords and the pole. That's what's in our style. But the shuriken are in there. Don't think that they're not, right?
Yes, and there's a lot of variation within them. Yeah. I've had a chance to talk to a guy named Les Kahn, and what's really interesting is he said, there wasn't the same standardization within the Chinese arts for designs, so everyone kind of had their favorite.
Yeah.
There was he said, so because of that, and there were so many kind of different factions. Anything that you can think of, probably something similar has already been done, but there isn't this is the standard on what must be done. Where the Japanese is a lot more, the Japanese schools were a lot more codified.
Correct. I looked him up.
Yeah, he's really, really neat. I want to do an interview with him, but he's very secretive for a variety of reasons that are his own.
Yeah.
Within ninjutsu, which is the first art that I belted in, there was a lot of work with the shuriken where you're doing these manipulations and stuff like that, right? Where, this kind of being in here, everyone thinks about going through and thrusting with them, right? Which is true, but this being in here and hidden and putting it through so that you can use that as a way to hook on somebody's body as you grab them and pull them in.
Yeah.
And things like that. And it's surprising how little pressure it takes to move somebody's alignment when there's a point on it, and they're not expecting it. And I don't even mean stabbing it into them, just like that kind of ow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree with you on that 100%. I learned that in Libre. Once it's for sure.
What do you think? So there's a variety of wave styles out there. We have IVA, we have Skanf, we have Amadu, we have BIM. What do you think makes Skanf unique?
Whew.
Because if we go through and say, well, all of this is just a collection of principles, what is it exists within Skanf that kind of that's Skanf?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because I'm not an expert on those other styles, right? And I actually don't know much about those other styles other than the IVA style because of my friend Lobo. And actually, when I first saw him throwing, doing this little crane thing, I was like, oh, that's interesting because it looks like it's a wave technique, right? So he was one of the very first people that I actually followed because I just thought what he was doing was pretty incredible, right? His power was pretty intense, and so I saw similar principles, right? As for what makes, if I could compare IVA to Skanf, I don't really know what the difference would be, right? For me, the biggest difference in Skanf, I find that and again, my knowledge of other styles is zero, right? I don't claim to know anything. I don't even claim to know Skanf that well. I'm just lucky to pick it up pretty good. But for me, the finger placement and um, what in Skanf you don't use the finger at all. It's just there, right? And I think in the other styles, it's very active in what it does to the knife. In Skanf, it's passive, right? It's that it's not tense. It's just there. You shouldn't even think about it. Where I see in the IVA style, when Lobo and I had a good phone conversation a couple months ago, again, it was a principle thing that he said, and it actually helped me with my throwing. And what his teacher told him, he's like, once you are at that point where you feel the reversal, like you and I discussed on one time, and you feel that pressure on the knife, you should be able to lean into the knife. Like he said, you should be able to lean on it like a door, like actually lean on it. Where I find in Skanf, that is not the case. It's elastic force versus a leaning force, right? So I think that anything that differentiates Skanf from all the other stuff, it's how that finger plays into the control of the knife. Because for me, when I see no spin done, the knife actually leaves the hand this way, right? Laterally. Is that correct? Just lateral. For me, when I throw, it leaves like this. It doesn't leave like that or anything. You know, I'm not doing that and then using the finger to do anything. The finger's just there, right? So when done correctly, I feel, it leaves the hand in this manner. It leaves straight, which I think is a unique aspect of Skanf. There is no, though I see other guys that are excellent at throwing Skanf, theirs does. When I dissected Fedden's videos, his doesn't, you know? So the principles are being applied in different ways, ultimately, right? So for me, again, for no spin in particular, it leaves dead straight. It doesn't leave here and then do this and turn around. For me, it's definitely pointing backwards and I pull, blah, blah, blah. But when it's released pointing at the target. I find in other styles, it's pointing at the target with this, right? And
That's very characteristic of the American style or the anti-spin.
Yeah.
And with that said, there's lots of guys that have that are very, very successful trick shots and doing that.
Dude, there's so many freaking talented throwers, dude. It amazes me how so many people can do the same thing differently, right? Which is cool, super cool. I love it. Like I learned Skanf, right? I like Skanf, right? That's it. Can I throw IVA? No, I can't. I don't know how. I'd probably call it, I just call it Skanf, but it's this way. It's just this instead of how Lobo does it, right? He does this wave and it's cool and it works incredibly well for him. For me, no spin and Skanf, straight towards the target. I think that's the differentiating factor with Skanf with all the other styles.
Okay. I've seen a lot of on the internet, lots of people doing wave style throws, and the majority of the wave style throws, like Bimo, he produces some great throwers, and the knife is more or less traveling in this the IVA for Lobo, the reason the Nomad is shaped the way that it is. Hang on.
Yep.
So the reason the Nomad is shaped this way is because as it flies, it's typically about 15 degrees down, traveling through the air, and it goes through and allows that to catch.
Yep.
If it's like this, or on the Nomad 2s that Kislair put out, and the reason we brought these back for Lobo is because this blade shape goes through and catches the target better. The Amadu, Nile Amadu, not a lot of people throwing his way now, but I mean, before Skanf and IVA became more prolific, it was one of the big ones, and his flies in this very straight way, right? He himself is built like a giant praying mantis. I'll send you some videos to look at, and you see this very big, this lean in this throat, right? And his blades fly again quite straight.
Yeah.
BIM, right? There's some guys out there that are throwing, right, where you have that method where it's just something different.
Yeah.
What I think differentiates finger quote Skanf from the others is it's the double hip action.
I call that the reversal. That's what I was trying to explain to you when we were talking.
Okay.
That's
like
exactly, so. You sent me a great video of that gentleman, the British lad, punch with the punch. That's it. That's Skanf. Yes. He's punching someone. You know what I mean? That's the exact thing. That punch starts from the ground, enters into his knees, into his waist, into his hips, and then double action, and then the relaxed features are up top, right? So there's a relaxed component and a tense component, right? Which is for me.
Yeah, I would say that's the characteristic that kind of differentiates Skanf is that double hip action. IVA, and I've had a chance to be in the garage of greatness with Lobo on several occasions. Every time we go to Toronto. And the way the IVA is generating force, it's with this still Chinese thing, but it's this opening and closing of the body.
Yeah.
Or it's this hinging, right? So in Chinese martial arts, you wind up seeing some schools that hit where it's like a bow, right?
Yep.
In gymnastics, you see an opening and closing the body, right? That's how flips, and there's a lot of stuff in gymnastics where force is generated with that opening and closing. And there's different ways you can do that, whether it's leaning back, whether it's, kicking your hip forward so that you're doing it.
Hey, be nice to her. She's blind. Sorry. My little dash hound's kicking the shit out of you. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah.
Hey, can't do that, buddy. She can't eat, bro.
What do we have here? Yeah, it probably would shatter your shoulder with a tungsten machete, and then it would shatter itself. Yeah, stuff like that happens in anime. Doesn't normally come true, unfortunately. I mean, there are materials that are finger quotes indestructible, but again, how much money do you have? You can go through and make really exotic laminates, I guess. I just throw with as little rotation as possible for me. Yeah, I'd like to speak for myself, I guess. I learned to throw Skanf because it was the closest thing to magic that I'd seen in a long time. I by no, you know what? If you want to learn how to stick something on a weekend, pick something else. It is difficult. It's a pain in the ass. Going through and the process of learning it is something that's not for everyone because it's very, very frustrating. But the dick of my throwing style is not bigger than the dick of yours. I just thought this was really neat.
That's awesome. That's
awesome. And there is, for a variety of factors, Skanf has kind of had a reputation for being a little bit culty and standoffish. And no, bro, you just don't understand this refined skill set. And I think it's a lot of horseshit. It just holds it back.
Yeah, I agree.
There's a lot of really cool info, and it's better to find ways how we're more similar. On that
I would
topic,
share anything with anybody. Like, I'm an open book. If someone has a question about Skanf, shoot me a text, shoot me a DM, whatever the fuck it's called on there. I don't know. I have a private account. I guess I should unlock it so I can answer some more questions. And Lobo keeps telling me, just unlock your account and represent your style a little bit more, right? If anyone has any questions about Skanf, like anything, if I can help answer it, I got nothing to hide. You know, it's just knife throwing, guys. It's fun. We should share all this stuff, right? It's not as complex, and like you said, it gets this bad rep, right? Because of that. And like you said, my dick's not bigger than your dick, right? That's the same. That's a traditional thing in all martial arts. Jiu-jitsu is better than kung fu. Kung fu is better than wrestling. Wrestling's better than boxing. No, they're all the fucking
better for what?
For what? Yeah, that's what it's exactly it. I'm like, if you want to learn how to choke someone, I'm gonna say don't learn kung fu. You might want to learn fucking jiu-jitsu, right? So everything's got an application, and I think people just need to drop their egos. Like, Jesus, just ego prevents growth, right? So, you know.
One of the most outspoken opponents of Skanf was a guy named Marcel, sharpshooter knives. And Marcel disappeared for a little bit. Danger told me, like, oh yeah, right, he just hates it, blah, blah, blah. But what a lot of people don't understand about Canadians, and especially blue collar ones, is it's a ball breaking culture. We bust balls, right? If I haven't questioned your sexuality in the last 5 minutes, we probably don't like you. It's just the reality, right? And so he wound up kind of when Skanf was first popping up. He's like, okay, well, I'm trying to help people actually get results, and you guys are just doing this stupid shit that's not working. So I'm just going to meme you and meme you and meme you until you finally just concede and accept defeat, right? So he actually lives in K-Town. He lives out in Kelowna, which I had some time off last summer, and I just drove the 9 hours to go visit him. And I chatted with him a little bit, and I was like, hey, man, send me the memes, because I think it's funny, and quite frankly, some of them are pretty hilarious.
I bet.
Right? Like, there's some of the videos that he did to make fun of it, and I was like, you know what? Like, this is awesome.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I'll see if I can dig up some of them where he calls it Cobra style. So I'm chatting with him. I was like, well, I've seen you going back and forth, and what I'll tell you is that the people you're going back and forth with, neither of you actually know what it is, right? So I'll come out there and I'll show you. I'm not going to tell you that I'm a better thrower than you, but I'll be able to show it to you as it is and how it works.
Yeah.
And so get you able to do some semblance of this. And you know what? There's probably a couple concepts in there that you might really like.
Totally.
And so I went out there, spent a couple days with him, and it's just like, obviously we shot a meme video together.
Yeah.
That with a Russian national anthem and me just like squatting up and down, and as I would pop up, I would throw a knife. While wearing a tracksuit jacket. So afterwards, he's like, well, now I know that I knew nothing about that.
Yeah.
And neither did anyone else that was in that conversation. He said, but you changed the way that I throw. Because he was doing that, like before he was doing the very traditional, right, like full rotation or the very like big lofty stuff. And I was like,
arc, I call it the arc. Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the thing, accurate, he was scoring all that. It's like, I said, I'm just going to show you some stuff. Right? And he's a boxer and a judo guy and stuff like that. I was like, I'm just going to show you how this works. I'll be able to get you doing it. And I said, and there's some things you can integrate. So stuff like having your throwing hand, having the knife move straight towards the target, right? Instead of going arcing over top, cutting through the center.
Yeah.
And I gave him a couple just basic drills, and now all of a sudden, it's not that his knives fly straight. I was able to get him to do it, but his knives are, instead of quarter turning and lofting, they're kind of eighth turning and driving in. And he calls me up a week later. He said, "I'll never throw the same again." He said, "I learned more about throwing." He said, "There's a bunch of it that I didn't like, and it's not for me, but there was concepts and principles that I was able to bring in and integrate."
Yeah.
And I think that all it took was someone actually have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Say, well,
it's
you can both throw.
Always that.
Here's how it works. Yeah. You don't have to do it this way. You can think it's horse shit, but here's what actually makes it work. And here, it does work. You can video it yourself. Great.
Yeah.
But I mean, to Mitch's point, it's results oriented, right?
This says, why can't people realize the best style is what works for them? I'll tell you the answer to that. It's a 3-letter answer. Ego. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. You know, I was taught to have no ego, right? So, and
how long did it take to get there?
It didn't take me long, dude. There was some gentlemen that took the ego out of me pretty quickly, right? If you meet the right people, you surround yourself with better human beings than you think you are. And if you're a prick, I mean, in the instances where I was in my younger days, I thought I was the shit, right?
Yeah, you'll catch a few silvers.
I'm 48 now, bro.
Yeah.
So, you know, I started Kung Fu when I was 23. And, you know, I knew everything, right? I got into bar fights all the time. I was a tough guy. I hung out with tough dudes. I got into lots of shit. I knew nothing. There was little people I used to call him Chinese Stan, and he was literally 4'3", you know, 65 years old, and he mopped the floor with me. And I'm saying, literally, I cleaned the floor with my body because of him. And I was so humbled because I had a big ego, right? So ego is a bitch. It delays learning. It delays opportunity. It's stagnant. It's just gross. So to answer that question, it's just ego. And if it works for you, man, and you're having fun and you're enjoying what you're doing, do what you're doing. Follow. Who gives a shit what someone else says, right? It's do what you love. Try different things. Just be humble.
Like you, I enjoy collecting skills. And it doesn't matter if it's, maybe it's just cooking, maybe it's whatever. Out of all the skill sets that I've used, the thing that's gotten me in the most places and been the most useful has been cooking.
Yeah.
Right? I tell you what, if you need a place to stay and you'll cook a single mom and her kid, right? A nice supper, she'll let you stay as long as you want.
That's right.
Here's my credit card, keys to my car, go get the groceries. Yeah, whatever. Absolutely.
So true.
Right. So I got myself places to stay and blah, blah, blah. Right. Of all the skills that I have, but going through and collecting as many skills as I have, the thing that I've learned is everything's simple until you start to do it. Yeah. I mean, it's just, right. It's like throwing a punch. It's just throwing a punch. Sure. Yeah. And start learning more about it. It's is it jabs, cross, and hook? Is it a dead weight ball and chain energy? Is it a breaking energy? All right, is my fist vertical? Is my fist quarter? Is it all the way over? Yeah. All right, am I Dutch style dumping it in?
Yeah.
For a Dutch style, am I going through and throwing a Russian style where it's that pop on the end, you see the Systema guys do? Right? Is it all that? Well, oh my God! It's not just the punch; it's all these things. There's all this complexity, right? Where's it starting, right? How you generate? Are you torquing off your foot? Are you doing an Irish style? You're doing a Mexican? You're doing Cuban? Are you just shifting back and forth? Right? What's your lead? And then after you've done all that, you realize that it's just the punch.
Punch, bro. Kick is just a. Bruce Lee said it, I think. Didn't he? Something like, kick is a kick, a punch is just a punch, or some shit like that, right?
Sure.
It's so. What is that name? Master Roshi taught me that there is always someone better. You know what my instructor taught me, and it was actually really cool. He said to me, he says, how good are you at Kung Fu? He was incredible. And I'm sure everyone says that about their instructor, right? And he says, Pete, I'm only second best. I'm like, what does that mean, right? He's like, I'm just second best. I just haven't met the person yet, right? So he wasn't saying that he wasn't really good. He was really, really good. But he also acknowledged that there is someone better out there. He just hadn't met him yet, right? But to acknowledge the fact that there is somebody better than you is a really humbling thing, and I think that'll keep you pretty level-headed. So I think that's a really rad comment.
Well, and it sucks when you find them by surprise, right?
Yeah, I don't. Dude, when your ego gets popped, it's just, this shit changes, right?
Well, it's always better to under-promise than over-deliver, right?
Yeah, we had that conversation on the telephone boat. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, sir. You got it. You got it.
What was the thing that has surprised you most about something that obviously is so simple as just throwing a pointy thing and making it stick?
That I could take a freaking spoon and do it. That I could take do you know what blew me away the most? I was throwing sewing needles. I'm like, Misha, you want me to do what? Throwing no spin sewing needle. I'm like, I thought because of the language barrier, I'm like, are you talking about those big fucking knitting needles? I can probably, no.
Like an upholstery one, yeah.
He was talking about a 1.5 inch tiny little ass needle, which he made me rip into wood. And I'm like, no spin? That's how I started my no spin lesson, was with the sewing needles. And I've never seen it done. So I was like, well, he's getting me to do the impossible here. This is not gonna. But once I did the principles correctly, it's very possible to throw it no spin. And my garage is 22 feet. So I don't know, 5 some odd meters, right? And I was ripping them 22 feet, and I just like, whoa. It blew me away. I was in there picking them up. That one thing about throwing sewing needles, they're real fun to look for on the ground. Especially because I got these little dash hounds running around, and one went somewhere. I'm like, okay, I got to find it. So I spent up to 45 minutes just looking for the bloody thing, right? So clear out your garage first before you start with those. But that was one of the most impressive things for me, was the fact that that was a possibility. It blew me away.
There's a lot of things that you can wind up throwing that you wouldn't expect, like drill bits. Like the ones for like little Phillips ones that are a couple inches long.
Yeah.
They're not even pointy. And I was talking to, I think he said his name, Bill Bednarik from True Bell.
Yeah.
And he was training with Misha, and he said that's the thing that he thought was interesting, was anyone can kind of pick up a knife and stick it, but you wind up being able to put that force into other things.
I can throw a baseball now, dude. I kid you not, I could not throw you a pitch or a football. It was just, that was out of, I could catch a football and run with it real fast, because I was always able to run fast, but I could never throw it. I'd throw something and it would just go shooting off to the left or to the right, or no power, or just, but now I can throw stuff. I figured that out. It's an applicable skill to other stuff, right? So definitely changed that for me.
Well, it's sticking to a wall. Depends on what the wall is made of, and depends what it is, but it is definitely possible. It is definitely possible.
It certainly is. Yes.
There is
the knives backwards, right? There was Misha made me do that exercise, half spin from a handle grip, right? But it had to hit the dull end into hardwood. So it's definitely possible. Meant to baseball, but yes. Will you stick it to the wall? Yeah, I can throw a baseball into gyprock, no problem.
Well, I mean, you can put it through half inch and make it stay in the studs. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
I was working on getting a long distance gunslinger no spin, And so I went through it, fired it, right, comes in, right, like pretty reasonable trajectory, right? Wasn't big and looping, right? Just, right? And it's like, yes. I go up there with a camera, and it's the handle is sticking into the stump. And that was like
Holy shit.
13 meters, 15 meters or something like that. And I was just like, son of a bitch, right? But it's like there was enough force to stick it into a stump doing that.
If the technique is correct, the result will be the same, right? That was one of the things I learned in Kung Fu too. It's like if the technique and the principle, so I guess if the principle is correct, the result will be the same. I mean, when Misha made me throw those nails, and it was the way that Nolan does it, right? Whatever, I don't even know the names of these grips, whatever that is, reverse hammer grip or whatever.
It's called an ice grip or whatever.
15 meters, I tossed it and it hit, and then I went and grabbed as it hit the target to try and pull it out, it hit one of my blocks. It was in there an inch and a half, right? From 15 meters, and then I'm shaking the fucking thing to drop it. Like it's insane. If you do the principles correctly, the result is just amazing. I think that was one of the most beautiful things about Skanf for me. It's like, holy shit, there's this energy that happens to the throwing projectile, whatever you've chosen to throw. It has like this explosive thing that it does. It's just so cool, it's so cool. I love it.
One of the things when I was first learning that would be just fascinating to me is like, okay, 5 meters, just belting them in there. Okay, I'm at 5.5 meters. What I was doing before it worked so well, I'm going to change it. Yeah. Works so well, I'm going to change it. And I'm like,
don't do that.
Right. And so it's one of those things where it's like getting over that mental side of what it is I need to do to make that work.
You know what helped me with that it was Coach Misha again was telling me just a different thing. It was throwing in the pitch black. Right.
Sure.
So then
obscures the distance.
You're only relying on feeling then, right? I know where the target is. It's right there. It's pitch black. Outside in the maybe not pitch black, but bloody dark, right? Sure. And if my hand position was the same, like you said, your grip the same, and you started from the exact same thing, I think I have a video of it actually. The knives were hitting each other and shooting off sparks, right? Which people get pissed off about it and whatever. But for me, that was a big thing because they're hitting the same area without me. I can't aim at the area. It's black. I can't see where I'm going. I know there's a target there that I'm going to hit the target. But the fact that they actually, all 3 knives in consecutive row hit each other, that has to say something about the technique, right? And I do a walk back, right? It was 3 meters, take a step back, 4, take a step back, 5. Yet they're still hitting the exact same spot. And I think that's because of the principles being applied correctly and the fact that the knife is not doing that lob motion, right? Because if it is, then things can change drastically. It's going directly at the target, whether it's half spin or no spin. It's going directly in a straight line. And I think that's one of the significant differences with Skanf and other styles, is that maybe all styles try to get to that straight line. But I really pride myself on what people call the flight path, right? That it's not a lob without sounding like it's not a lob, right? It's a direct path. And I think that's one of the things that really drew me to Skanf too, is that directness. If you think about it, if it's a straight line, and if you were to take a protractor and just make an angle, well, it's still a straight line, right? So if you want to hit high, you hit high. You want to hit low, you hit low. You hit medium, you hit medium. But the technique or the principle doesn't change. Direct line to the target, right?
It's interesting seeing how it winds up coming together, and getting over that mental side of, you had made the point that throwing is not an accurate description.
Yeah.
And I think that if you want, I mean, you can try to do stuff in other ways, like with other methods, but definitely when you're looking at Skanf is not, you're not throwing anything.
Yeah, and
You're
if we don't use
launching,
that push
you're
pull
projecting
analogy,
it.
I would
What's that?
call it, if we don't use the push or pull terms, okay, let's get rid of those because that creates a bunch of negative shit for people. I would call Skanf knife shooting, right? It's shot out of your hand. It's not released. It's the forces that you create internally create a shot, not a pull or a push or whatever. It's knife shooting, you know, because when you shoot a bullet, yes, there is a trajectory if you're doing the long
Depends
distance
on the
knife
distance.
from a distance, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but if you're going to shoot a gun from the same distance that we're throwing knives, there's no trajectory that's happening. It's a straight line, right? So it's knife shooting. It's cool.
The helping people understand, like in the tsunami method videos,
Yeah.
I go through and I use pictures to help people understand. And the tsunami method is just for throwing shuriken is something that, full stop, I made it up because it's how I throw, and I didn't really feel like listening to people talk about how that, well, that's not how you actually throw. It's like, actually, it's how I throw shuriken, and you can do this or not. Right? It's characteristic. It's heavily influenced by Skanf, and there's a loose wrist and a loose arm versus the Japanese styles, which typically have a stiff wrist and typically a stiff arm, right? So whether here, right, and it's like a swatting. There's somewhere it's like a Buddha palm, right? But for me, the analogy that I use is, imagine you have water, like a piece of peanut butter or something like that, stuck in your hand, and you want to go through and get it to fly forward. You're just getting it to fly forward. You're shaking that off. The way that I teach what I call a Russian punch, or El Gancho de Russo, is a gancho is a hook. When you're stepping across, your body's already has this transfer. And it's like you have a cup of damp dirt. So as your weight transfers, you just, like you're trying to shake out that dirt.
Yeah.
And so it creates this pop.
Totally.
And having gone through and looked at striking in that way, where you're, I guess it might be somewhat internal styles, but Slavic styles of striking, specifically one out of Pula, Croatia.
Yes.
In which there's this stepping and this stepping, boom, and there's this pop, right? There's boom. And so as that stuff happens, there's this pop on the end. There's this pop on the end.
Yeah.
And for me, I found that idea to be quite common within Skanf.
Right. Transfer of energy, I call it, really.
Yeah.
Right. All the energy in your body into this little end point, right?
You bring it to,
yeah.
You're having it converge.
Correct.
When you take a basketball and a tennis ball and you stack them and drop them, and the tennis ball takes off and the basketball moves, when you're going through and having that transfer and you stop, and that keeps going, right? So that,
that's right.
And you start seeing that in, like, how is it a pitcher's throwing a fastball? Yes, like that. When you watch how Loic throws, which is heavily influenced by baseball.
Yes, I see that. Yeah.
Because
sure looks like it.
Everything, like, I see everything in throwing through the Skanf lens. Yeah. If you go through and watch the footage of how he throws, it has a lot more in common with a wave style throw.
To me, it looks like he's throwing a fast pitch, right? Like he looks like a professional freaking ball player. Like he can.
He's still, like you're talking about straight flight pass. He's probably. I've seen video of him doing a 17-meter no spin throw.
Yeah.
And it comes in like a bullet.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite guys to watch. But if you go through and look at the way that he's generating force, pushing off of his rear foot, driving forward and posting, and it's chambering, right? He's from here, it goes straight through towards the target, as it gets to there and kicks over, he's employing wave throwing style principles. And I don't want to kind of get stuck in the trap of, well, any good throwing obviously is something similar to Skanf because, right?
Yeah, that's right. You got it.
Right? Like in any step, any good throwing, that's I mean, it's just like Skanf. But any bad throwing is like that's something else. No, there's principles that he's employing, but we also see that in high level sports. And when you go through and you look at things in terms of to throw a fastball, there's no way you can do it with tension. You just can't.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Tension in the right spots. Down low, relaxed forces somewhere else. It's a combination of both, right?
Pavel Tsatsouline, the guy that brought kettlebells to the West, he talks about in his video Fast and Loose that the difference between an elite athlete and an ordinary person, and also ran, in their ability to dynamically contract and relax is about 800% as far as what that speed is. So from there, there's that pop, and there's this like load back and launch, boom, and just be able to like do that and let that go unencumbered, on track. He said, and that's really what you're looking at when you're throwing. It's what you're looking at in Skanf. The ability between somebody that is highly trained and somebody that's not is about 800%. So what difference does that make? Well, if you can dynamically contract and dynamically relax, that relaxation makes it so you don't have two-way brakes on.
Dude, the same thing in our Kung Fu style. It's the same. Yep. Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons I picked that up a little bit quicker than most is that they're the yin and the yang, right? There's a little bit of each, and then there's those two little dots within each other as well, right? So there's relax and there's tension as well. There's hard and soft principles, right? They can't just be soft. If you're fucking soft, you're gonna fall over like a piece of spaghetti, right? So if you cook spaghetti, just half of it gets cooked, then it's a whip, right? You know, it's hard on the bottom, but it's a whip. So
the world's worst whip.
World's worst whip, but yes, right? But so having both, having the understanding of where those forces occur. I mean, if you're soft down below and hard up top, I don't know what that's going to look like, right? I don't know, right? I don't know if that would work, but you might want to have a better base and then softer up here. Maybe not soft's not the word either, right? Relaxed, whatever you call it.
Heavy, whatever, right?
Whatever you want to, whatever. It's so difficult with Chinese, you know, to convert Chinese into English. There's so many misunderstandings and mistranslations, right? So it's like when my instructor used to say, be off. So then guys would be like limp, right? I'm like, oh no, not limp. That's fucking dead. Don't be limp, right? So to understand what we're kind of saying, some people might misconstrue what we're kind of saying here, right? But find out for yourself, right? I've always said, I'm like, find out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I don't fucking know anything. I just know some stuff. So I might be full of shit, but the only way you're going to find that out is to try it on your own, right? So I always tell people, get some information, try it out. If it's not working for you, maybe you're not doing what the other guy was doing. Maybe you need a really good instructor. I always said, get correct instruction. Don't be so humble that you don't want to pay someone to learn something, right? Or so egotistical, not humble. Don't be so egotistical that you don't want to spend some money to get some information, right? Because people think that, oh, I'll just watch a YouTube video nowadays and I'll download this shit off. Fuck. You're just misguided, in my opinion. I think get the proper instructor, do some research, make sure you get the correct one, and then do 100% exactly as they say. You will succeed. That's just a recipe for success in anything. Knife throwing, kung fu, ballet, for fuck's sake. Anything, right?
But when you go through and you look at how the willingness to invest in coaching and both financially invest in it, but also invest in that time, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, having taught martial arts and fighting stuff to a variety of people for a very, very long time, nothing's funnier than having somebody that
thinks they know what they're doing.
That doesn't know at all what they're doing that wants to show up and tell me what it is they like to do. And I'm like, don't
Don't
care.
care. Never have.
Like, don't care. You're terrible at what you're trying to do. And this person over here has been doing this for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year.
Yep.
They're half your size, and they're outshining you, right?
They
Like, nothing you're going to do
with
today on your first day is going to be impressive to me.
Yeah.
Just follow the process. And it's very, very difficult to do that. And especially when you go through and you look at, something that's as simple as throwing a knife.
Yep.
Well, okay, but how many pitchers, right, kids, like baseball pitchers, spend time working with a coach to learn how to throw a ball, which is a much simpler thing to be able to do.
Here's my favorite, one of the favorite things I heard. Tom Brady, like, he's a fuck of a good quarterback, right?
He's okay.
He's okay. He has a coach, right? Tiger Woods, one of the best golfers of all time, right? He has a fucking coach. So is the coach better than him? No, I'm not saying he's better, but there's something, right? There's something. So don't let your ego write checks that your ass can't cash, right?
There's also a certain amount of a good coach. Like, a coach will make you do the things that you need to do and not the things that you want to do.
Oh.
Where when you're doing your own programming, you know what I really like doing? Great. But the thing that you're terrible at, you spending an hour on the thing that you're terrible at, do you know how much better you're going to be? You could be 100% better at that thing that you are horrible
That's right.
at after an hour. Where something that you like to do and you're already good at, an hour is not going to, it's going to be a drop in the bucket.
Sifu used to say, he says, practice the shit you're good, practice the shit you're bad at, not the stuff you're good at. Right?
Okay.
It's like, it'll improve the other stuff that you're already good at. Trust me. And it will. It really will.
Have you found that going through and you've been able to employ some of the finger quotes internal concepts for generating force and stuff like that? Have you found that that's a correlation to your martial arts stuff?
100%. Yeah. 100%. It's, it's all the same. I always say, right? It's all the same. It's the same stuff. And for my students, like the ones that I've shown in my class, that there's only one, to be honest, that I've shown how to throw a knife. He just says, "Hey, it's your style is just kung fu with a knife." I'm like, "Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it is. It's just an expression with the knife, right? You do stuff and stuff happens. That's it. You're
just putting it into an object instead of just into your hand.
Into your hand, right? Into your fist, right? So it's
projecting force.
It's an expression of energy. That's it. It's just a transfer, the correct transfer of energy into something, right? Whether it's a fist, whether it's a sandwich or a knife, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to wrap this up, but I got a couple questions for you.
Shoot, I got like a 7% battery life.
Okay. What is the advice that you would give to your younger self?
No ego.
Okay. What is the quote that you find yourself reflecting on daily? Maybe it's like a live, laugh, love that you have in your bathroom or something.
Oh man, family first.
Okay. And what 3 books would you recommend everyone should read? Doesn't have to be related to throwing.
Bro, for me, the first book, there's so many because I'm a reader, bro. I crush books. I have a library, my own personal library. I consume knowledge on a daily basis. If I had to pick 3, let's go. One I actually read recently was Alcoholics Anonymous, the Big Blue Book, because so many of my friends and colleagues have drinking problems. I've never had a drinking problem. I don't drink alcohol. But that book there has a lot of stuff in it that is applicable to many things in life. The other book, obviously, would be for me, the Bible. And the other one I have that I really like is a book called Street Justice. by a gentleman named Chuck Zito. Chuck is a Hell's Angel, right? I met him when
He
he
was
was down.
the former president of the New York City
Yeah,
chapter.
man. I got to meet him down here when he was here at the clubhouse here. I used to hang out down there when I was younger, right? And dude, like that book is amazing. It's got a lot of good shit in there. A lot of good shit.
Why is it you don't drink? I don't drink either. I'm just interested. Your reason.
I don't drink because it's poison, right? It's just
Did you
bottom line.
used to
Poison.
drink?
I'm sorry?
Did you used to
In
drink?
my 20s, I did, yeah. But, and to be frank, never much. I never got, I think I've been drunk once in my life.
Okay.
And then some beautiful girl took my car for a week and I couldn't find it. So it taught me a lesson to not fucking drink again. But I met this really hot broad that way, which was pretty cool too.
Oh, there you go. Awesome.
Don't drink. It's poison. Yeah.
For me, the reason that I don't drink was my first jobs were working in the industry. The ultimate question is, are you an ass man or a boob man? I'm not getting into that.
I can't either.
Not myself.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't either.
You want to know what we're into? Our wives.
My wife.
Right?
Yeah, man.
Right? Who's got the perfect everything? My wife.
Yeah.
Who cooks the best? My wife. Thank you.
Yeah. Please definitely open your profile to public, watching you both discuss your ideas, theology. But thank you so much. You know what? I'm a real private person, guys. For me to do this interview with Asa, he just called me up today and dropped this on me. I believe two things. You'll never grow in comfort. So I'm not a guy that would ever do this. When he proposed this to me, I was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. Because it's totally out of my comfort zone. I hate doing this kind of shit. So
well, and I didn't give you enough time to like think of a reason not to. Hey, what are you doing later? No plans. We're doing this. Like, yeah. Damn it. No time for an excuse.
Said, yeah, let's do it, right? Because that's just, yeah. Don't stay in your comfort. Get uncomfortable, guys, and ladies too. It's just be uncomfortable. There's only growth in uncomfort, right? And just be happy with the chaos. Like, just do that. Do the hard stuff, and there's so much stuff that comes from that. So I appreciate you asking me this, because it was like a fucking challenge for me to do this. So I thank you for it, man, very much.
Absolutely. Does anyone down below have any questions they want to ask Pete? Go through and give 10 seconds for the questions to start pouring in, and if nobody gets there, by the time I'm done saying this, we are going to close the interview. Okay. Pete, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Always.
Set your profile to public.
We'll chat very soon. I'm going to go change it to public and see what happens.
Sounds good. We'll talk soon then. Go.
Okay, man. Peace.
Thanks for showing up, boys.
Thank you, everyone.